Okay, so I just finished reading, finally, the book The Stand by Stephen King, and I've got to say, this is now the best book I've ever read in my entire life. It used to be Let the Right One In, and it was Let the Right One In for over a decade, and The Stand takes the cake by far as the best Stephen King book and the best book I've ever read, and that merits a series review because obviously I've never seen the series. I decided to read the book first, and now I want to check out both series. Since the new series, the one that was released in 2020 with Whoopi Goldberg in it, was is streaming on Prime. What a perfect opportunity! So I thought a little bit about how I'm going to structure these reviews because I do want to make a lot of book comparisons, but I also want to separate the show from the book at the same time. Also, it's funny because I read Doctor Sleep first as well before I watched the film. And when I watched the film, I was extremely disappointed with the film because it was 2.5 hours long and it still felt like the most rushed thing that I've ever seen after reading the book because it just felt so beat after beat after beat and then it's done and it's like you skipped so much. So it always happens that way when you read the book and the book is always better and there's so many differences and so many bigger details in the book and so much more depth in the book so every like compared to the adaptations that they make either on television or movies. And I didn't I want to watch the director's cut of Doctor Sleep, but the original theatrical cut just didn't do it for me after reading that book. So I read this book, and it's almost 1,300 pages, right? So I'm like, how are they going to adapt a book this big into a series? And I read the book. I'm like, this thing was the best thing I've ever read in my life. There's no way the shows can compare. So let's just put them on and we'll get through them. We'll see how they are because I can't see them being that good. And I put on the first episode of the newer series, the 2021, and I'm telling you right now, I eat my words. Okay? This show's fucking awesome. It's so good. I'm so glad that I read the book first. But you don't really have to read the book to enjoy the show. So it's not one of those things that's necessary, but I strongly recommend reading the book first. So this review series is probably going to be for anybody who hasn't read the book, but also for anybody who has and is very familiar with the book. I'm probably going to start out these reviews. I'm going to go episode by episode and start with the show, and then I'm going to make book comparisons. I can't even talk. Book comparisons afterwards, after the initial review of the show. So, starting with episode one of The Stand, in the 2020 Stand, starts with this kid. He's basically going through a church and he's on cleanup brigade because this is post-apocalyptic and you have all these rotting bodies all over the place. It's really disgusting. And it just basically starts to introduce yourself to a world that is completely in havoc and dead, basically, and you only have a few survivors. Your basic post-apocalyptic story. And then it flashes back, and you get this kid, the same kid that was on cleanup brigade. His name is Harold, and he is kind of a nerd and a very like awkward kid. You can definitely tell he's an awkward kid. He peeks through this fence at this girl named Fran or Franny, and Franny is like a very girl next door kind of pretty girl. She's like you can tell she's like the popular girl in school or at least the prettiest girl in school. She's very like close to her dad and stuff like that. He's bullied and you can tell he feels that he's not on her league, you could say. At least he feels that way. And the way he presents himself, you can tell that he's just not socially calibrate kind of thing. He's also a writer, which you figure out when he goes home and he finds a letter that he's been denied a book called Soulmate, I think, that he sent off to be published, and it was denied, unfortunately. And he's just really stuck in his head all the time and has no friends and is always bullied and is clearly obsessed with this girl named Franny. And he just it's made very apparent that that he is. And during this whole time, when you're introduced to these characters, it seems that everybody's getting sick with something. They're always coughing. Everybody's sick around everybody. People are in the rooms. You know, everybody's always coughing. Everybody's not seemingly not doing well, kind of thing. And then you have this scene where you're introduced to this guy, and he's basically in quarantine. And this doctor's taking care of him, and basically he's, you could say, patient zero. His name is Stu, or Stuart Redman. And he's being treated, he's being watched, kind of like a guinea pig. And he doesn't know why he's there. And then it flashes back to kind of what happened. There was this car accident, and this guy that crashed the car was really sick and dying and basically throwing up all over the place as if he was on some, flu hysteria or something like that. And basically, this guy named Stewart was there, present, trying to help this guy. And that's why he was put into quarantine just like everybody else. Except in Stu's case, he's not getting sick where everybody else is. So that's why they are trying to help him. So we flash back and forth. We go back, we go to full apocalypse mode, full world destroyed, prior, during kind of thing. We have a scene where Franny is burying her father. She's like getting him ready on the bed, and then she's trying to drag him down the stairs. Franny's very beautiful, by the way. And she's burying her father, and Harold is always trying to come around and kind of flirt her up, kind of thing, or try to as best as he can, but she's really not having any of it. Basically, she also babysat for him when he was younger, even though they look the same age. So it's kind of weird that way that like she's supposed to be older than him, at least by like 4 or 5 years minimum, but he almost kind of looks a little bit older than her even. But they definitely look the same age, but you can tell that she's not feeling it at all. And then when shit really starts to hit the fan, Harold kind of takes it up on himself to be the superhero, the white knight, as you can say. And, he's talking in the mirror. He's saying all these things that he's going to say to Franny, and he's like reciting lines and stuff like that. He's just being really creepy. He's slicking his hair. And he's just that, he doesn't know how to dress himself, because when he shows up at Franny's house to like rescue her, he is scattered in like 70s clothes that don't fit him at all. He just does not know how to dress himself at all. He knocks a few times, and then he just lets himself in. And then he hears the shower running, and he knocks on the bathroom door, and he's like, Franny, I'm worried about you, Franny. And he bursts through the door. I'm like, because I thought she was just going to be taking a regular shower, right? But he bursts in there, and I'm like, oh my god, what's going to happen? And apparently she attempted suicide, so I'm like, okay, well, it's a good thing you jumped in there. So he saves her life, and they have this moment on the couch. They're listening to Ozzy Osbourne. I'm going through changes, which I actually really appreciated them dropping some Ozzy in this episode. Josh Boone directed this episode, which I've heard that name before, and I definitely have seen some stuff that he's directed before, but I can't recall off the top of my head what Josh Boone has directed, but that name definitely rings a bell 100%. And they have this moment where they're, I think, listening to music, unless it's just, part of the show, but they're hanging out on the couch, and he's saying, like, it's up to us to start the world over again, because we're clearly not getting sick while everybody else is, and I feel like it's up to us to figure things out, kind of thing. And I like how they do a lot of visuals in the show too. They use a lot of corn. This is a Stephen King thing. Stephen King likes to like throwing corn and cornfields into stuff. There's these wolves that show up with red eyes that look pretty cool, and gives a good like aesthetic to everything that's going on. But I like Stu's character, and his confusion in the situation that he's in, because he's given absolutely no answers to anything, and he's left in confusion with everything. So and the dialogue is fantastic. The show is so well written. I totally eat my words when I said that this show was gonna suck compared to the book. I mean, the book is a masterpiece, but this show is beyond well directed. The guy from Midnight Mass, which I wrote down three names and I totally forgot to write the guy from Midnight Mass's name down. I'm such an idiot. I loved Midnight Mass. The guy who plays the priest in Midnight Mass plays in this show as the doctor who's taking care of Stuart Redman. And literally, I wrote down James Marsden as Stu, Odessa Young as Fanny, or Franny, and Owen Teague as Harold. And I forgot to write down the doctor's name. J.K. Simmons also pops up in here. He has a really good moment with Stu. Basically, after the whole outbreak happens, and he's a general, and he's basically like he doesn't know what to do at that point. He's kind of just given up and lets Stu go, even though he's responsible for keeping Stu there and eliminating him if he has to because he is patient zero. But he says fuck it, the world's ending. Just go, pretend I never saw you. So I really liked that moment, and I liked the moment too where at the end where they go back to the original guy who was in that car who was found by Stuart Redman and a bunch of other guys. What happened to him because he used to work at a military base and he escaped the military base during outbreak during while the when the virus kind of went airborne and he escaped selfishly. I mean, it's his responsibility to not do that, and the whole facility is supposed to shut down if an emergency happens like that. But he happened to get away, and he did, and then the world ended. So it was a really great first episode, and I liked a lot of things about it, and that's what I got to say about episode one. So for anybody who hasn't seen The Stand, I recommend reading the book. If you don't want to read the book, if you're not a reader, go watch The Stand because The Stand is amazing. This episode blew me away, especially for being an adaptation for a book this good. I have to say I'm impressed because although Doctor Sleep wasn't a bad film, it just didn't hold a candle to the book. I mean, the book is like here and the show's here, whereas this book is like here and the show is like it's reaching, like it's really good, especially like modernizing it because the book takes place in 1990. This show obviously takes place in modern day because they mention Instagram and stuff like that. So that's the episode, and I'm now going to start to make a little bit of comparisons to the book. So if anybody's read the book, they'll understand what I'm saying. Harold's character in this show is just skinny right off the bat, where he in the book was represented as being extremely chubby. So he's a very chubby kid, especially at the beginning. He starts to get more fit later on during the apocalyptic world, but he's very chubby and very like youthful looking, like very immature. Whereas in this one, they make him look thin, but also a little bit older looking, but a lot creepier, like very creepy. He also played in It, the actor, Owen Teague. He was in It Chapter 1 and 2. And they just portray him as a thin, awkward kid rather than a chubby, insecure, awkward kid. So in the book, he was more like loserish. In this one, he's just straight up like, I'm gonna chop you into pieces, creepy, kind of thing. Franny, they got a gorgeous girl to play Franny. I knew she was gonna be hot. In the book, I just pictured her. I pictured her in these like high-waisted shorts, like 90s, like late 80s, early 90s girl with like curly blonde hair, real skinny, real thin. And in this one, they got such a beautiful actress played by Odessa Young playing Franny, I should say. And she's gorgeous. Her lips are perfect, and her body is Franny. She looks like Franny. They got a good Franny. And then they also got a great Stu with James Marsden. I was expecting him to just be a little bit scruffier in the face, like more facial hair, or at least like more scruff. Other than that, he basically looks like Stu. He looks like a more Abercrombie Stu. I pictured the Stu in the book to be more like blue collar kind of tan, like working class 9 to 5 kind of average dude with a bit of a tan and a bit of a scruff. In this one, he looks more like he has the slick black hair and like the broad, handsome model looking face. But overall, he looks as close to Stu as I could picture in the book. And like I said, Harold, I like the change that they did in him. I like when he comes home and his sister Amy, which they also again mention in the book, is having the bridal shower. Not the bridal shower part, but they mention Amy, I mean. And she's all crying because her friends didn't want to come over because this plague is going on. And he comes home with the rejection letter and he gets all pissed off. And I also like Harold and, well, I'm not going to say like or hate because I'm going to say it's just different with the way he comes in with Franny, because Franny is always rejecting him and like uncomfortable with him being around because she doesn't like his presence. She didn't in the book and she doesn't in here. But you get a lot more dialogue with them in the show than you do in the book, which I am surprised because of the size of the book. But in the book, it's kind of like he's he's like how do you say, like an annoying child to Franny in the book. Like she's an older like 21-year-old girl and he's like this 15, 16-year-old boy, and she's always trying to like brush him off like an annoying kid. In this one, because they seem such close in age, they seem to bond a lot more. They talk a lot more even though she's not interested. She kind of consults in him a little bit more, and like there's much more of a bond with them, especially in the sense of his delusions, which, because I've read the book, I know exactly where this is going. See, do I say where the book goes? I probably shouldn't because some people watching this review haven't watched the whole show, or maybe they have. I don't know how many people are aware, kind of thing. So I'm not going to go into spoilers, but their relationship goes places and takes a lot of different turns in the book, and I can see them go. I can see the show going that same route, but maybe it'll go a different route. I don't know. But I can already see where things are going, knowing the book. That I'm kind of like excited for it, kind of thing, and you can definitely tell more in the show Harold's obsession to Franny, where in the book he's obsessed, but she's, I'm not going to say mother figure or big sister figure because he clearly wants to fuck her in the book. It's just different. It's more detailed in the show, which again is funny because it should be more detailed in the book, but maybe it's more detailed, or it feels more detailed because they modernized it and they really make it feel 2020. So maybe that's the case. But I love the red-eyed wolves, and they, obviously it's supposed to resemble the the Dark Man, the Randall Flagg, whatever you want to call him, yes, the Walking Man, whatever they call him in the book. I love how they open the show with Harold throwing up in that church that I mentioned, because that scene happens like way more than three-quarters into the book. And then they end the show with the opening of the book, or they end the episode one, with the opening of the book, where the guy escapes the military chemical warfare disease control facility, whatever you want to call it, and selfishly goes and grabs his wife and kid and gets in the car and drives down and crashes his car and gets everybody infected, including Stu, which that's how the book opens up. So I really like how they play back and forth between the book, because the thing is, this is going to be way longer than I thought it was, I'm sorry. I could never be a screenwriter and adapt a book the way this show did, because the only way that I would like think of doing it is going from beginning to end, right? With the book. That's what I would picture a show would do. But this show is genius because it starts like in one scene, which is relevant in the book. I remembered it as soon as it started. And then it goes to, flashbacks and like Franny burying her father, which is a huge scene in the book, but again, it's like a quarter into it that it happens in the book, and they play it well. The suicide thing didn't happen in the book, but I like how they added that to the show. I loved J.K. Simmons character. They didn't add that to the show. That's different too. When Stu escapes the facility that he's being captive in, basically J.K. Simmons' character just says fuck it and lets him go, where in the book he just kind of grabs a key card and steals a bunch of shit and escapes. I liked in the show Stu's conversation with the doctor before one of the employees comes in ready to kill Stu because they need to. Like, he only follows orders kind of thing. So he comes into the room ready to kill Stu, and then the doctor tries to stop him, and the doctor gets shot, and then Stu slashes the employee's neck, which is like totally inflamed. I love how they inflame everybody's necks that get sick. I never pictured that they would do that reading the book, but in the show, like, everybody that gets sick has these huge necks and they just look grim. Like, when he slits the neck, it's like this big bubble of like grossness. It's just, oh, it's such a great horror show. And and then what else is, yeah, because in the book it's the doctor that comes in and tries to convince Stu to say like, oh, everything's good, we're just going to transport you into the different room, and like, you know, we're going to run some tests and stuff like that, and Stu's like, no, you're not, you're going to kill me, and then he kills the doctor and escapes. Whereas this show, they kind of switch it around where he's friendly with the doctor, and the doctor, played by the guy from Midnight Mass, is having like a, like, he's sick himself, but they're having a good back and forth, and I like the banter and I like the dialogue and I love the writing in this show. And then they switch it up with somebody else coming in to kill Stu. So that's a little bit different. Whoopi Goldberg showing up as Abigail. She was really good, giving Franny the message, just like what happened in the book. I like subtle details. They use the pie because Franny really likes her rhubarb pie. She always liked eating her rhubarb pie at the beginning of the book. So they always show the rhubarb pie, like whether it's fresh or whether it's getting old now because it's been left on the counter. Really, really cool details. Adapting the book to show, and I'm gonna say it once again that I eat my words thinking that this show was gonna suck because of how epic a book this was. Still, this is the best book I've ever read, and I gotta finish the show. This is episode 1, and I'm already going 23 minutes talking about the fucking thing. But this is how much I recommend the book, and this is how much I recommend the show. So this is going to be an episode by episode review series, and if you've watched the show or if you haven't, stay tuned because, well, you probably should watch the show because this is going to be spoilers. But if you haven't read the book, I am going to be making book comparisons, but I'll be making them on the second half of the review. I'll be just giving an episode review starting, and then I'll go to book comparisons kind of thing. I already mentioned all the comparisons in the book, but everything else is pretty much the same as it is in the book, just in different order. Like, it's definitely a show that's going to go back and forth, which I really like. And I really like the change in Harold. The Harold is definitely the character that feels the most different, but it's in a good way. And I like his jealous rage when it comes to Franny. He's you definitely see some jealous streaks in him, which you saw in the book, you're going to see in the show. So, anyways, I don't want to go any longer. So, subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more. Stay tuned for the Stand review. I'm going to go right up to episode 8, one episode at a time. So, until next review, check out my others, subscribe if you're interested, and I will be back. So, take care and cheers. Till next time.